Welcome back to another episode of Trip Report. On today's episode, we're going to talk about Kambo, otherwise known as Kambo, or honestly, both of these are kind of Western or American pronunciations of it. I believe south of the border, which is where it's from, it's known as Sapo. So whether I say Kambo, Kambo, or Sapo, I'm referring to the same thing throughout this podcast. So Kambo is not an actual psychedelic. It actually doesn't induce any hallucinations or anything along those lines, but it is often lumped into the same category as all of these plant medicines or natural medicines that are out there. It's been super beneficial for me, so it's probably worth doing an episode on this stuff. Kambo comes from the Phyllomedusa bicolor tree frog. It's also known as the giant monkey frog or the waxy monkey tree frog, but it's a bright green, super cool looking frog that is down in the Amazon jungle. Kambo has a whole slew of benefits. I mean, I just Googled what's the benefits of Kambo, and the first thing that comes up is it says Kambo is known to have antibiotic properties. It strengthens the immune system and effectively eliminates pathogenic microorganisms from the body on the physical level. Kambo is also known to be an effective anti-inflammatory. It alleviates pain in the body, rejuvenates eyesight. In addition, its uses have widely been documented, including the treatment of Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, migraines, depression, blood circulation, cardiovascular problems, female fertility, and problems with AIDS. There's so many different benefits that they tout online. I looked at another website. It said it boosts immune function and strength. It improves overall stamina and physical strength. It eliminates emotional blocks. It flushes out mental and physical toxins from the body. It improves chakra energy, stress relief, boosts self-esteem, releases negative energy, which they call panema in the jungle. It does a complete detox of the body. It says it allows you to enjoy a more meaningful connection with your inner spirit and purpose, and it increases physical healing and well-being. So that's a lot of stuff that's thrown out there. And I mean, to tout all of these benefits, it's like, again, me being a very research-oriented person and wanting to see the science behind stuff. When I read all of this, when I was first researching the Kambo, it was like, okay, prove it. That was just kind of the thought process I had. This is a lot of over-promising of what I thought would ultimately be underwhelming. So taking a look at it from a scientific perspective, there are a series of peptides that have been identified within the poison that comes from the Phyllomedusa bicolor frog. And peptides are all the rage these days. I mean, the Kardashians are known for using the semaglutide for weight loss. And then all of the longevity podcasts talk about things like BPC 157 and Samorlin for reducing inflammation, naturally increasing HGH levels. There are so many beneficial peptides that are out there. And like I said, there are 14 that are identified within the Kambo. A couple of them are, one being phylomedusin. It's a neuropeptide that has powerful vasodilator effects. This one produces contraction at the smooth muscle level and increases secretions of the entire GI tract, such as the salivary glands, the stomach, the small and large intestine, the pancreas, and the gallbladder. And these are the main peptides responsible for the deep purge that's produced when receiving Kambo. Another is phylokinin, which is another potent vasodilator. It's another important peptide of scientific study because it's hypotensive and increases vascular permeability due to the contraction of non-vascular smooth muscle tissue. So it increases the permeability of the blood-brain barrier, and it's also related to the mechanism of inflammatory pain and possesses antimicrobial and antifungal properties. The next one we'll talk about is phylloaruline. It's a neuropeptide, which also produces a strong contraction of smooth muscle tissue. It contributes to a drop in blood pressure, modifying satiety and the body's thermoregulation. It can stimulate the adrenal cortex and pituitary gland and contributes to greater sensory perception. This peptide also possesses great analgesic or pain-relieving properties, and this peptide is largely responsible for the sensation of nausea, vomiting, palpitations, and the sweating during Kambo. Another peptide of interest is dermorphin, which is a heptapeptide and produces a powerful opiate-like activity on the opioid receptors and has a potent analgesic effect, pain relief, that is 30 to 40 times more potent than morphine. Dermorphin may also have effects on pulmonary ventilation and pituitary hormone release. The next two are dermaceptin and adenoregulin. These antimicrobial peptides are involved in the defense of the frog's bare skin against microbial invasion. They also show lethal effects against a broad spectrum of bacteria, fungi, yeast, and protozoa. Several years of research carried out at the University of Paris have shown that the peptide dermaceptin and dermaceptin B2 are effective in killing certain types of cancer cells. Research at Queen's University in Belfast won a prestigious award for their groundbreaking work with cancer and Kambo. Dermaceptin B2 operates in the body through the adenosine receptors, a fundamental component through all human cellular fuel. These receptors may offer a target for the treatment of depression, stroke, and cognitive loss disease such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And the last one I'll mention is tryptophans, which is a neuropeptide consisting of 4 to 14 amino acids, which are opening up new perspectives on how the human brain works. It's also found to be highly potent against yeast and candida in the gut. These are just a handful of the known peptides within the poison. And like I said, I'm a believer in the science behind these things, and clearly there are a lot of benefits from just the peptides alone in helping with the various systems of the body. Now, I discovered Kambo back in 2018 at the Arizona Psychedelic Conference. There was a seminar given by Caitlin Thompson, and she was discussing specifically Kambo with autoimmune disease. She said that she had personally pushed her own Lyme disease into remission, and Lyme disease is one hell of an autoimmune disease. I've heard my lady and all of her peers who are doctors talk about how difficult it is to treat people with these chronic diseases like Lyme. And she claims that just using Kambo, she was able to push this harsh disease into remission. So that was one of the seminars that I attended, and I was there ears wide open, ready to hear anything that she had to say about it. So she put it on the radar, and when the conference was over, we came back to San Diego, and it kind of fell off the radar for a couple years, and it eventually came back on as I was browsing through my notes from the convention. So I started doing some research on Kambo, and the first thing I came across was a Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia episode that's titled Tripping on Hallucinogenic Frogs, which is a 3-part YouTube series. It's worth a watch, super interesting. But when Hamilton finally found the frog and they administered it to him, it looked like he was having a difficult time. And the next morning, he straight up says he woke up and felt like shit. And he made the comment of he doesn't understand how the drug rumors of the benefits of this stuff even got started. So I continued to look for other YouTube videos, and I came across another one, and it was a Playboy journalist, and she herself went through a Kambo ceremony. And she was a young, attractive Asian woman, and when they administered the Kambo to her, she looked horrific. And seemed to, her experience was horrific as well. I mean, her whole face swelled up. Her eyes essentially swelled shut. Her lips were huge, vomiting nonstop. It just looked like absolute hell. I mean, that kind of, between seeing, well-respected Hamilton Morris have a bad time, and then this lady reporting on it having a bad time, it kind of had me thinking, do I really want to do this stuff? But I kept thinking back to all the benefits that I saw in that seminar at the Arizona conference. And I figured, it's probably worth at least giving this a shot. So I started looking around for anybody who practiced with Kambo in San Diego. And I came across a place in San Diego called Medicine Frog Kambo. And when I clicked on the link, sure enough, I saw a photo of Caitlin. I had no idea that Caitlin Thompson, who hosted that seminar at the conference, was San Diego based. So I was, pretty happy to see that it was her website, but I saw a note on there that said she was in Thailand for some training. But there were 2 other practitioners, Brian and Victoria, who I could get in touch with through the site. So I touched base with Brian and we set up a session. This was in February of 2020. When I talked with Brian, he suggested that for something like autoimmune disease that I do it 3 times within a lunar cycle, which meant that I needed to do it once per week for the next 3 weeks before that next lunar cycle would start. I can't quite remember what his pricing was, but it was significantly cheaper to do Kambo in a group session of 3 or more than it was to do a solo or private ceremony with him. So I reached out to Anthony, who was on a previous episode here. He said he was game to do it. And then Brian told me that he had somebody else who was already willing to do it in a group session as well, and that would be enough that we could all pay the group rate. So we got set up, showed up bright and early on a Saturday morning, and we were instructed to fast with both food and water prior to the ceremony, and that we needed to bring 2 liters of water with us. So the ceremony began, we all sat down, and we went around the room just kind of sharing our intentions for why we were there to use or work with Kambo. Mine was, as usual, to push this autoimmune disease into remission. He had asked who of us wanted to go first, and I just jumped on the grenade. I was the one who dragged Anthony along. I didn't know anything about this other guy, and I figured, let me just put myself out there, get in there. And he told me, cool, go ahead and start drinking that first liter of water. So after finishing that first liter of water, he had me stand up, and he was just kind of saging me all over to start the ceremony, to include saging the bottoms of my feet. I sat down, and he kind of meditated on me for a moment, and he suggested that I do 6 points. I didn't know any better. I didn't even see anything in my research about how many you were supposed to do or anything like that. So I was just like, yeah, this guy's the facilitator. He knows what's up. Let's do 6 points. So he heated up the little stick that he had, and he did the 6 burns on my right shoulder. And honestly, no biggie. Didn't hurt too bad. They're just very superficial, quickly touching that hot ember on the skin, and opened them all up. So basically you put a little burn there that induces a blister, and then you peel the upper layer off so that you have exposure to that first layer underneath the skin, which will allow the Kambo to get into the lymphatic system. So what he said was he was going to do, the first one would just be a test point. So he said now that all of the blisters were open, he would just do 1 point of the frog poison into one burn just to see how I reacted to it. So he put the first one on, and as soon as it hit the skin, I could just feel the burning associated with it. And then slowly my right shoulder started to heat up, and then that warmth kind of spread throughout my whole body and then worked its way up into my head. And honestly, it was super comfortable and kind of euphoric. I mean, it was a little cold in the place that we were. I mean, this is February, so early in the morning, so it was probably only 40 degrees or so. And I don't think he had any heat in the little place, his little ceremony space or anything. So when he put that on and my body started warming up, like I said, it felt pretty comfortable. And like I said, everything heated up. It felt nice and comfortable, and then it started to wear off. And this is all within maybe a matter of 3 minutes. And he asked me how I was doing. I said, good. And he said, okay, yeah, you had a good reaction to it. We can administer the rest. So he put the other 5 points on, and just like the first one, all those 5 points started burning, and then the warmth came back very quickly. But this time the euphoria transitioned into nausea, and I felt the warmth come into my head again. But now I could feel my entire face, particularly around like my eyes and my lips, starting to swell up. And I laid back against the wall, and I could feel my head start to pound. And it wasn't a headache per se, but it just felt like my heartbeat was in my head. And I mean, I legitimately felt like a frog. Like when you look at a frog and how it breathes that way, that's what my head felt like it was. And so I sat there for about 15 to 20 minutes while that poison just coursed through my veins. And the feeling that I had was that it was like circulating through and working its way into every little nook and cranny in my body that was full of toxins and bad energy and whatever you want to call it. But it seemed like it was going through and cycling and just pulling everything up, or just whatever was stuck there that I needed to get rid of. And like I said, it had been like 15 to 20 minutes that had gone by. And the facilitator seemed a little confused that I hadn't purged yet. So he told me just continue working through that 2nd liter of water that I had with me. And then he said he was going to flip the points. So he rehydrated all the points that were there and flipped them over so that the fresh poison got into the gates. Now it got to the point where every time I would inhale, the nausea would build but then as soon as I would exhale, it would subside. So it was like on the inhale, I would think, okay, I could puke now. But then when I would exhale, I would just go back to baseline and it wasn't a big deal. But with each one of these inhales, it got worse and worse and worse until finally it was the point where I was like, okay, I need to get over a bucket right now. So I grabbed it and started to vomit. And the purges were just a super bright green, like really gnarly color with like a lot of mucus in it. And I would say, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 purges, but all of those 2 liters of water definitely came back into the bucket and then some. So it wasn't, I was pretty clear to me that it wasn't just the water that I had vomited up, that there was some other stuff that had come out. And again, maybe it was just bile, or maybe it was all of the negative things and toxins or whatever that were trapped in the body, but there was more than just water vomited into that bucket. So when I finished vomiting and then all the dry heaving was kind of over with too, I kind of felt like I was coming back to baseline, and he asked me if I felt that I was complete. And I felt like I was. I didn't think there was any chance that I was going to vomit anymore as long as I hadn't drank any more water. And he seemed satisfied with that answer, and he removed all of the poison from the points. And he wrapped it up by putting dragon's blood onto the points to seal them to end the ceremony for me. So Anthony and the other participant were next. They both ended up doing less points, but they also looked like they had a much harder time than I did. And then at some point during one of those guys going through it, I had the feeling of, oh, we got a back end purging now. So I jumped up, went to the restroom, took care of that. And so it was, I basically got all of my negative stuff out of both ends. And I do feel like I cleared myself out on this first ceremony. The other guys wrapped up with their combo, and we called an end to the ceremony and all went about our separate ways. And honestly, I felt exhausted for the rest of the day. But when I got up the next day, I would say that I felt lighter. I felt a little bit better. I couldn't get anybody to join me for the next 2 weekends to keep that group rate. Just no, it didn't work out for anybody, and Brian didn't have anybody else set up already that he could slide in there with me. So I did end up having to pay the solo private rate for the next 2 weekends, which, I mean, I would rather have not done that, but I almost felt like, oh, well, if I don't get all 3 done in this moon cycle, I kind of got to start from scratch on the next one. So I just paid it, got it over with. And if I remember correctly, so it was 6 points in the first ceremony. I think I did 9 on the second, and then 12 points on the final. So it was a total of 27 points in that moon cycle. So I waited a couple of weeks following the 3 ceremonies, and I did follow up labs. Now, prior to Kambo, my kidney function was bouncing around in the low 60s, which is the low end of stage 2 kidney disease. After the 3 treatments, my kidney function jumped all the way up to 82. I had never even gotten close to that, regardless of what dietary changes I'd made previously, fasting protocols, supplementation, etc. I mean, everything that I had tried never moved my kidney function at all. And yet, after 3 treatments with Kambo, I jumped up 20 points, which is, unheard of. So I was sold that there was something to this Kambo stuff. Unfortunately, it was becoming quite cost prohibitive, especially having to do solo ceremonies. And in my mind, I was like, hey, I really feel like I need to keep doing this stuff. I need to keep working with it, but I just can't afford it. And after the 3 ceremonies, watching him do the burns and what was associated with a Kambo ceremony, I thought to myself, if I can just get my hands on some Kambo, I'm very confident I can do this to myself. I just have to find out the appropriate way to burn myself so that I don't go too deep, cause any scarring, or, I just need to figure out the safest way to administer this. But if I can figure that out, I'm pretty confident I can do it to myself. So I jumped online and looked around for a Kambo training course, and sure enough, I found one. So I decided, what the hell, if I pay for this, it'll very quickly pay for itself if I just do it on myself and then offer friends of mine a fraction of what the quote unquote going rate is in San Diego, and figured it was a good skill to have. So that being said, the certification course was rough. Day 1 was a just breakdown explanation of Kambo and everything about it. And then we practiced the burns on that day. So they just showed us how to burn ourselves and then open it up to have access to the lymphatic system, but we didn't apply any Kambo on that first day. Then on day 2, the instructors gave us a set amount of Kambo to start with. And I guess because I explained to them that when I went through my 3 in the moon cycle, that my final one was 12, they told me go ahead and start with 9 points on your first experience. So my first solo experience, I did the 9 burns and I put on the poison for the 9. Now, this Kambo was much more potent than what I got from the guy in San Diego. So those 9 burns, those 9 points, it was much, much harsher and a much more difficult experience. I mean, I was just vomiting nonstop. My facial swelling was way worse than it was even at the 12 points down in San Diego. And I just got through day 1, not looking forward to day 2. But I had to film myself and then send that, because this is an online certification course. So I had to film myself and then send the video to the trainers, and then they would give me feedback or critique what my experience was. And so I got the thumbs up that everything was good. And they told me on day 2 to go ahead and bump up to 11. And then on day 3, they had me bump up to 13. That being said, this was way too much. Now, I think it was too much in general. Like, I don't think this strength of Kambo that anybody should have even had 9 to begin with, but then to follow it up with 11 and then 13 back to back, just, one day after another, it was overwhelming. It was way too much for my system. So especially day 3, that 13 points, I legitimately felt like I was dying. And it was just absolutely terrible. I vomited quickly every single thing that was in me. And then for 20 minutes straight, because they tell you in this certification course, you need to leave it on for 20 minutes, because basically they said 20 minutes is the minimum amount of time to leave it on. If you feel complete at 20 minutes, you take it off. But if you still feel like there's more to purge, you can leave it on for up to 30, 40 minutes, whatever. And I was struggling from the 5-minute mark, just dry heaving nonstop all the way to 20. And I couldn't wait to get it off. But, I was in the certification course, so I figured they have to see on my counter that I made it to 20. As soon as I hit 20, popped them off. And finally, that feeling of death started to very slightly diminish. Now, the swelling in the face and all of that is typically resolved within a few hours of a Kambo ceremony, but I had it all through the rest of the day. And I mean, I administered this at maybe 9 a.m. and at 9 p.m. I still had extremely swollen eyes and lips, and I was nervous. I mean, I definitely overdosed in the stuff and should not have put that much in my system. Even the next morning, I still had some swelling around the eyes, but almost everything else had gone back to normal. But it became very apparent to me that that was way too much, and I would probably never do high doses in a row like that ever again. So about a year later, I read the book Sapo in My Soul by Peter Gorman, and he's largely responsible for bringing this frog medicine to Western culture. He said that the Mastis people rarely administer more than 3 points, which is accurate to what Hamilton displayed on his trip in that documentary to the Amazon. Gorman said that he was at some gathering where people were administering Kambo, and he said he saw people doing 7 to 13 points or something like that. And he said he was blown away by it. And like, that this was just that people were doing way too much. That this was essentially dangerous, the levels that they were putting into each other. So, I mean, I've gotten to the point where I will, especially after reading this book, I on myself will only do 3 points. I won't do any more. And it's always enough to induce a purge. So there's no reason in my mind to do any more than 3 points. And I know that I had heard Aubrey Marcus mention on a podcast that he felt his throat closing during a Kambo ceremony when he was overdosed with it. I know he needed pharmaceutical intervention. I don't remember if it was an EpiPen or Benadryl, but that being said, I think it's best to play it safe whenever it comes to Kambo, and don't be a hero when you choose how many points to administer into your skin. Like, it's just better safe than sorry with this stuff. Now, following the training course, I had ended up doing blood work again, and this time my GFR was up into the low 90s, which means I had bumped from stage 2 kidney disease up to stage 1. So again, I'm a believer in this stuff, whether it was the spiritual side of it or the peptide side of it. Regardless, I had bumped up, and my kidney function was greatly improved from what it was when I started. So I had done Kambo on and off for a little bit, mainly offering it to some fellow veterans that I felt could use it. But I took a break from Kambo for about a year, and it was only recently that I started feeling a calling to it again. A couple weeks ago, I decided that I would try to do just 1 point per day for a week. So not enough to induce any purge, but just to get that euphoric, warm feeling like I had from that test point on my very first experience. So that was the game plan, was just do it once per week and see how I felt after a week. And the first 3 days, it was just that. I would do 1 point, put it on, and leave it on for 20 minutes. And it was just a nice, euphoric, warm feeling. And I'd feel it for 5 to 10 minutes, and then it would slowly dissipate until I hit that 20-minute mark, and then I would pop it off. And that was kind of how it went for the first 3 days. Then the next several days, it felt like the potency had increased. So the warmth would trigger, but then I would start to feel a little bit of facial swelling, and a tiny bit of nausea would kick in. And then on the last couple days of that week, the nausea had built enough that I felt like if I had focused on it, I probably could puke if I got over a bucket or the toilet or something, but I just rode it out, suppressed it, and finished out the 20 minutes. So I finished out the week, and probably about 3 days after, I decided to do follow-up labs. The lab work that came back was completely normal. For the first time ever, I had no anemia, no kidney disease, nothing. Every single marker on that lab work was in the normal range. Now, full disclosure, I did do 3 bouts, so an hour each, of hyperbaric oxygen therapy a month prior. So those effects could have done some repair and then lingered all the way on past the month. And then I also mentioned that I did do that ayahuasca experience in Joshua Tree, and I got the message in that the entities were healing the remaining ailments in my body. So I guess there's a potential that had something to do as well. But nonetheless, after 1 week of 1 point a day of Kambo, according to the labs, my autoimmune disease is in remission. So take it as you will, but I'm a believer that Sapo is a natural medicine that was given to us by Mother Earth to help us with our ailments. If you're like me and had chronic autoimmune disease and you've tried every single thing else out there without any benefit, I think it's worth probably just giving it a shot. Like I said, I've tried a bunch of different things out there. And although the most recent bout, I could blame it on hyperbaric oxygen, I could blame it on potentially ayahuasca. Those first 3 experiences that I had in that moon cycle, I went up 20 points with my kidney function, and there was nothing else that changed at that time. So there is no doubt in my mind that these peptides have the ability to reduce inflammation and help push autoimmune disease into remission. I think that covers everything I was hoping to address in this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, take care. Love you guys.